For as popular as the Nintendo 64 was, early adopters didn't have many games to choose from. Players in the United States and Europe could pick up Super Mario 64 and Pilotwings 64 at launch, but Nintendo fans in Japan got an additional launch title that was never released in other regions. It's Saikyou Habu Shogi. Yep, we sure missed out on this one. If you're unfamiliar with shogi, it's a strategic board game that descended from the same ancient ancestor game as Western chess, and many pieces have direct chess equivalents. There's one piece that moves like a bishop, another that acts like a rook, and this one moves like the horsey. At the same time, there's plenty of additions that set shogi apart from chess. Many of the pieces can be promoted once they reach the opposing side of the board, giving them more movement options. And in what's probably the biggest difference between the two games, you can actually deploy enemy pieces that you've captured and add them to your own side. This rule in particular is what makes stalemates rare in shogi compared to chess. Saikyou Habu Shogi is significant for a few reasons. For one, it's the first third-party published Nintendo 64 game. Sega published this one, following up on the company's many previous shogi and mahjong releases for the Super Famicom. Over in the United States, they were also responsible for publishing stuff like Castle of Dragon, Q-Billion, and that awful SNES Wizard of Oz game. Saikyou Habu Shogi is also the first celebrity-endorsed Nintendo 64 game, since it features the likeness of a pro shogi player. The Habu part of the title refers to its cover star, Yoshihara Habu, who was fresh off of winning all 7 of Japan's major shogi championships earlier in 1996. So in terms of star power, he was a pretty good get, as far as shogi players go. A year earlier, he starred in Tomi's Habu Meijin no Omoshiro Shogi, or Master Habu's Interesting Shogi, for the Super Famicom, so he was no stranger to the world of video games at this point. Now, while Habu is a master of his craft, I haven't been to chess club since elementary school, and I don't even know where to start with shogi. To the game's credit, there's plenty of tutorials and hints for beginners, and there's a mode that lets you replay matches step by step and save them to an N64 controller pack. In fact, Saikyou Habu Shogi was the first N64 game to make use of controller packs instead of internal battery backup for save data. But, as you might expect, all the menus are in Japanese, and they use a lot of specialized kanji, so the language barrier here is pretty high. I'm not really sure how much of an improvement this game is over 16-bit shogi games either. Prior to Saikyou Habu Shogi's release, Sega made vague promises about using the N64's processing power to produce better shogi AI, but any improvements here are lost on me. And while the board and pieces are in full 3D and can be viewed from a variety of angles, the frame rate is lower than you might expect for a game with such a simple graphical presentation. Players in Japan were also apparently underwhelmed when the game originally launched. Visiting Tokyo in 2009, games writer Chris Kohler saw one store giving away entire shipping boxes full of Saikyou Habu Shogi, free of charge. These brand new copies couldn't even be sold when they were clearanced out at 50 yen. The game had apparently been hanging around shops for quite a while at that point. Kohler goes on to explain that whereas Super Mario 64 had a 1-to-1 sales ratio with Nintendo 64 consoles at launch in Japan, console tie-in sales for Saikyou Habu Shogi were apparently more like 100-to-1. So it was a major flop and a blight on Japanese retailers for decades after its release. Big deal! Saikyou Habu Shogi has exactly one redeeming feature, and it's this amazing collection of Sears Portrait Studio shots of its cover star. I love how it rolls in a different one every time you bring up the screen. I could do this forever. Man, there's a lot of these. This ROM's gotta be like 10% shogi pieces and the rest of it's just this guy's face. So yeah, aside from that one excellent feature, Saikyou Habu Shogi is otherwise best known as Super Mario 64's forgotten launch partner in Japan. But it wasn't all bad news. Seita's work apparently impressed Nintendo, and the two companies later collaborated to develop the Alex 64, an arcade board based on Nintendo 64 hardware that powered a dozen games released between 1998 and 2003. And almost immediately after Habu Shogi's release, Seita announced a sequel, Morita Shogi 64, which launched in 1998 with a modem connection port on the cartridge, allowing for online play. But let's be real here, which would you rather have? Online play? Or the Habu family photo album? Next is the N64's other worldwide launch title, Pilotwings 64. How does it stack up compared to the SNES original? We'll find out. If you like watching me struggle with Japanese table games, we previously covered early PS1 Mahjong sims in our companion series, PlayStation Year Zero. And if you want to see new episodes before they're released to the public, you can back us on Patreon for early access. Thanks for watching.